So May 24th, maybe May 25th, but we're going to be feeling it. Saturn is ingressing and moving into Aries. Now, we've already had Neptune moving into Aries. They're both going to end up retrograding back into Pisces and then move forward again. Retrogrades always offer us an opportunity to review, revamp, look over things, let things kind of digest and settle before ultimately the planet moves forward out of its shadow and starts moving fully into that sign. Now, I got a really potent hit about these planetary transitions. So we've got Pluto and Neptune are outer planets. I do think Saturn's an outer planet as well. So that would be representative of generational evolutionary changes that are happening on a cyclical level. That's what Astro is teaching us, that, and like we have our personal authentic blueprint, which is our personal natal chart. It's multi-layered. Thus, we all have our complete unique signature. Now, that points me to Pluto in Aquarius. Pluto in Aquarius is continuing. See, Aquarian is a Saturnian energy like Capricorn. So it's sort of just that continuation, but with your Uranus involved, it's also taking us into these higher realms. So in our quantum energy fields, in our ability to express ourselves via social media, to relate internationally, instantaneously, and tune in to multidimensional information, at the click of a button, basically. So we're sharing these higher quantum templates, as it were, to help us heal, to help us share, to help us express more, learn more from these sort of higher dimensions, right? And Pluto is going to continue to destroy the lower aspects. So, we can call it the false matrix, we can call it the patriarchy, we can call it old paradigm, we can call it the illusion of separation, the fear-based mainstream media, disclosure. You think about disclosure where more truth opens up to more people. So Pluto's going to just keep working for us on that level where more people are going to awaken and be ushered into their authentic self, thus healing false narratives or healing ancestral trauma, to get to know themselves, because that's the Aquarian signature to me is always like being your most authentic self, and ideally like being able to express that for the whole. It doesn't mean we have to all be expressing on the internet, but it means that we're just safe being who we are, knowing that we all deserve to be here, belong here, have chosen to be here, and yeah, want to express that transparency and authenticity for the whole. It's like being the change, right? Being the change you want to see in the world, and knowing that you being the change for you is also good for the whole, right? That you being you doesn't hinder other people from being who they are, which is very much the old patriarchy, or and what am I hearing, that Piscean signature, right? Where we have to give our power to an external god, an external dogma, religious structure, an external government authority, organization, whatever it might be, right? So we're integrating those false paradigms or ancestral trauma or old world, right? And then birthing something new. And that's where Aries comes in. Aries is the baby. Aries is the spark of life. Aries, yeah, it's like, I'm here. I am, right? It's the first sign of the zodiac. So we really are in dynamic and pretty exciting times. Plus, for a little while, we're going to be having Saturn and Neptune at the early degrees of Aries sextiling Pluto. So there's going to be a lot of mass awakening, a lot of more people being like, man, why is the system so fucked and like so cruel, right? So old paradigm is based on brutality, cruelty, force, violence, right? Like where you have to force yourself through either brutal force, like the wars we're still seeing, or deceptive force, like mainstream media and corporate corruption, and a lot of the kind of false um sort of criminality of the economy as it stands, the global economy. So bring it back. So I also forgot, I did a share on TikTok, and then I forgot to talk about Chiron, because I think Chiron has been a major player in all this, because Chiron for, my God, what, the last like 7 years or something has been moving through Aries. No, I don't think that long. Anyway, correct me, any astro lovers out there. Chiron moving through Aries, if it's been aspecting any planets, or if you've got any planets, especially luminaries in Aries, I don't know about you, but I really got to know about Chiron as it transited through Aries, because I've got my sun in Mercury, and bang on when Chiron was conjunct those signs. Oh my God. Plus, when we had the Jupiter Uranus conjunction in Taurus, that was conjuncting my natal Chiron, and like it all blew open. Psychologically speaking, I had another layer of awakening and psychological healing, pointing to my mother wound, which up until that Jupiter Uranus conjunction on Chiron, on my natal Chiron, I was either, you could say in denial of, but it was unconscious. I didn't know. I couldn't see clearly until I could see. And then that led to a deeper layer of healing that I otherwise couldn't see, which is now finally stabilizing the nervous system, having appropriate boundaries, just feeling whole. And then when Chiron was going over my natal sun and over Mercury, it was just pain supreme. It was the deepest, darkest, most painful shadow work phase that my own path was preparing, leading me toward, etc. Right? And okay, so and then on a collective level, right? Because these are outer planets. These are collective generational shifting that's happening. So Chiron, whilst it's been healing the self, right? Healing our perspective of the self, healing our own innocence, you could say, right? Because Aries to me is a very innocent energy, although it's linked to Mars, which is war and all that, but that would be the shadow, right? Temperamental, um, angry and forceful and aggressive, versus just like, I'm alive. Wow. Look at, look at this expression. And so Chiron is still at the latter degrees of Aries, finishing off its cycle in Aries, thus firming up our healed self and a deeper understanding of the wounded self, right? The force, the brutality, and the war, versus, oh my God, I am free and innocent, and I'm allowed to be here, and I can create my own reality. Chironic healing through Aries is us remembering that we are creators and that we got the power. We individually have the power, but our individual creatorship is also one as the whole, right? Unity consciousness. To thine own self be true. Thine is the kingdom. Embodying the most divine teachings to express the divinity within self, and embody it, to be an example. And thus it's our quantum energy field that is truly healing, not just our words. And that's where we can start to unpack and start to recognize where words can fall short. Just because we say one thing doesn't mean that's what we're actually vibrating, right? So then that brings me to Neptune, Saturn, kind of coming into this Aries part of the sky and truly birthing a new paradigm. Like Neptune to me is the vision, the visionary, the broader quantum spiritual aspect of this collective homeland, as it were. And Neptune, the shadow would be deception, delusion, smoke and mirrors, which is why Neptune in Pisces has been breaking down old dogmatic structures, forcing us to see the deeper layers of our own deception, self-betrayal, self-abandonment, but also how we have been deceived by the external world via media, Hollywood, celebrity. Thus also why we're seeing, as Neptune continues its movement, are coming into pure potential and power to then break down the idolization of celebrity. So, giving these celebrities, these leaders, these people in the media more power than they have, right? Thus, as in those celebrity, wealthy, elitist, whatever, they're not more powerful than anybody else. And we have to know that. We have to embody that. We have to be the I am for the self in your own personal reality. So, for a lot of us, that's where some of these transits have ushered us to not watch social media or media and social media possibly, and to not idolize worshiping celebrity. Way back in 2018, I was talking about that on the YouTube channel about like the worshiping false idols, or like why worshiping idols is not like useful to our embodiment process, and us claiming our own personal power, and then the inevitable collapse or fall of that ideation, that kind of worshiping celebrities or worshiping false idols, right? At the end of the day, we're all just human beings having a human experience on earth, and empathy and compassion and love can help us to see through a lot of these destructive veils, which are the old paradigm, the illusion of separation, the fearful protection, where we have to control and dominate one another, where we have to use brute force and cruelty and like deception to try to conquer and rule, right? Which from a deep knowing comes from a lower base tone, comes from a shadow aspect, comes from fear, right? Those that use violence and use power and use deception and use control are deeply wounded human beings, right? And then often those who have to accumulate and hoard and have lots of stuff to be special, there's also a deep, potentially brutally disgusting shadow to all that, like we're seeing in some of the trials with certain celebrity people. I don't even want to mention the name because it's just like, huh? Destructive. At the same time, there's power rising with Ceres. There's power, you could say the divine feminine, the feminine within us, but some of that is actually very physically represented with females exposing darkness to become more whole in themselves, and the bravery and the courage in their story to shine out the darkness of power and corruption. So Neptune is the visionary in its higher base tone rather than deception and illusions. And it's moving into Aries, which is birthing a new spirituality. Because a lot of us, even from the esoteric and the ancient spiritual teachings, etc., is that we're embodying those. Thus, they don't have to be attached to like some guru outside of self. We ourselves are our own personal teachers and our own personal gurus. And then we can build our lives around that and share it in co-creative and collaborative community. You could say, again, these are just words, so we needn't get too overly attached, but like matriarchal structures, or again, community, like working in community rather than cult, working in collaboration rather than competition. We're not having to scramble and step all over each other to get ahead. We don't have to lie to get ahead. We simply are. So being rather than doing. And a lot of that is just the day-to-day choosing to love ourselves, honor ourselves, listen to the body. That's why intuition in the body is Hala Shazam, because that's the quantum expression. We have to feel our physical vessel. We have to honor the physical vessel because that's us honoring the world. That's us honoring one another, right? And the shadow stuff is just the process we're all having to go through personally, I suppose, to break down the ancestral trauma, the distortions, the programmed fears that we carry, and it's a wild ride, right? For sure. And in a sense it's ongoing, and yet I'm starting to see, sense, and experience the profundity of that healing, where we come back to like the midpoint. We come back to like a 0 point and then just feel better. Suddenly we're not emotionally purging every day and not able to sleep, or having to morph ourselves for other people, or having to compromise ourselves for other people, right? Well, a lot of that will point to our ancestral healing and or our mother father wound. So okay, so Neptune birthing new vision, opening itself up to higher visions in the Aryan signature after Chiron has moved through Aries to heal the self. And then Saturn, it was really the Saturn piece that got me, that has led me to want to share this. I'm Capricorn rising with the South Node, so I have a pretty potent Capricornian signature, and have been on the path for a while, over 20 years now. So 2001 was my first spark of hardcore awakening. And again, it's not like I consciously knew that 20 plus years ago. It was just my life experience that led me to follow my intuition, that led me to practice and then eventually teach yoga, that led me to heal, still healing, but like led me to kind of really heal and release a lot of the shadow stuff, heal my family system, lineage, and now having a better relationship with my mother and father, with my sister, just having a better, more honest relationship with myself, right? And like, not always comfortable. That's the point of separating ourselves from, or over attaching ourselves to certain archetypes or constructs, being a savior, or being a good girl or a good guy or a bad guy. We just are, right? And we're constantly biofeedbacking off of the situations that we're creating in our personal reality, which can often be maybe tests, but and or also just our ability to be authentic and honest, right? That's sometimes the biggest piece. Pluto and Aquarius, how do I be my authentic self, sometimes requires difficult conversations. um but again, the honesty and transparency piece, right? If we're not being fully honest, if we're having to kind of skew and create different narratives to justify and or rationalize or project blaming somebody else, versus just saying, well, this is how I'm feeling and this is what we could do. Or anyway, I'm rambling a little bit, but so the Saturn is the el potente, because Saturn is what's going to help us build. So we've been guided by the higher vision of Neptune, right? And then the kind of darkness and or destruction that Pluto is bringing in. Pluto has been destroying via disclosure systems of corruption, systems of fear-based coercion, as it were, and deception, that now we're disclosure is breaking that down, stimulating more and more awakening, people then breaking free, creating their own communities, wanting to live differently. Like, it's very physical, wanting to live differently on the planets. More and more people leaving corporate positions, leaving corporate jobs, building more sustainable businesses, changing their lives, buying less, boycotting big corporation, and then that's sort of in wave form moving out into the collective. So Saturn is sort of going, okay, you've got the vision, build it, now live it. And and like the discernment is that we're still shedding overly structured ideas of, like, so Neptune, spirituality, right? So it's like, for me, 20 years into a yoga practice and teaching, I'm realizing, like, I don't necessarily, people are like, oh, what style? It's just my own personally developed style after working with people for over 20 years, working with people from all over the world, and having success and on that level, right? And being able to get intuitive hits and downloads each session, depending on where the client is, depending on, so it's not like I'm following an external guru system or tradition, although that was the early training, right, with Shivananda and Ashtanga and Kundalini, and deep diving into all these different systems and traditions, and then also seeing the shadow of some of those more male-dominated systems and traditions, and then embodying the teachings as I understand it, to then share the wisdom through the practice, not through I am teacher master and like you have to listen to me, student. Like me here with you guys now, I'm the same in my yoga practice with clients, and I'm the same, when I'm reading tarot for clients. It's just, and there again, that's the discipline of Capricorn. I only come to realize I was Capricorn rising back in 2015 when I had my first astrological reading, which was then like a trigger point to, because my astrologer then was like, yeah, you're going to work online. I was already posting on the YouTubular, but then I went deep. I published a book. I established Ultra Love as a business. I created online courses. And again, autonomy, self, creator, Aries. I have Aries, Sun, and Mercury, right? And there's a Yod aspect with Mercury at the bottom, and it creates a quincunx to my Virgo moon and my MC in Jupiter and Scorpio. So there's a finger of Yod, a destiny point in my own personal birth chart, connecting to my ability to speak and communicate, rationalize, and think, and then my body, my feeling, also my ancestral karma via my mother wound, and then MC in Scorpio, esoteric, deep transformation, rebirth, right? Taboo topics. And quite frankly, having good luck, Jupiter. Although there's so many layers to all these different planets, and we have to use discernment and nuance, right? Because there's good and bad, and high and low, and shadow and lightness to all of the planet signatures, right? But Jupiter on the MC on some levels could be good luck. And again, there has been that. Like people externally, especially MC is how people see us. People would perhaps think I've been lucky with regards to how I've attracted amazing clients and worked in award-winning retreats and how I've been guided. Because it's all, in my perspective, just been guided. Anyway, so Neptune is the visionary, the vision coming into the new of the I am in the higher base tone, because that's what cycles and spirals and evolution is all about, right? At the same time, the hard, heavy planet of Saturn, that's part of the polarization that we're going to continue to see. As painful and as sad and as tragic as it is, again, that's where it's like trusting your guidance, whether you're being guided to protest, whether you're being guided to boycott, whether you're being guided to just disengage and focus on your own peace, focus on your own healing, focus on your own love, and having compassion and empathy is so profound. And our ability when what's necessary to listen to one another, engaging, like for example, for me, just listening to all different types of voices and races and classes across these social media platforms. Social media is an opportunity to make this leap, to share our inner worlds with one another, right? And to learn this very quantum information about where we're headed. And a lot of us will know it intuitively because that's the template we carry, especially as we continue to purge the old and heal the trauma and let go of the old stories, right? We can be the new. And again, Saturn is physicalizing it. It's where I think I'm getting a bit excited, because like the Pisces is the end. So it's like now we're headed into this like higher vision where it's actually like living that higher vision in real time, building our gardens, right? Integrating into our new communities. And that's where things are shapeshifting with Saturn at the anaretic degree. The aspects, the people, the things, the old systems that are not going with us are going to continue to fall away. And then embodying these new higher visions through Neptune and Pisces, through the practice of a lot of spiritual practice, and then embodying it in the self, Aries, because there again, it's not like it's like not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. There's lots of things from this old world even that we want to continue to have with us, perhaps. And then the things that are not meant to are just going to fall away. That's part of embodying deeper spiritual wisdom. Just knowing this sort of fluctuating illusion that we're all in. and endeavoring to embody as much of those higher visions through empathy as we possibly can, to trust that we're being guided in an appropriate way, to hold space for the whole, because it's working on so many different levels. The idea of spiritual warfare is also going to be landing. It's all warfare. If we're at war with one another on the planet, that's happening in the outer planes as well. So it's through cleansing and understanding a lot of those outer planes, which again, different people will have different templates, thus different ways of expressing and understanding the multidimensionality of our truth here. And then the more we share and embody and understand, and then collectivize, collaborate, right? The more we can build new businesses. And I'm getting a hit. So back in 2019, I traveled through Europe. I was driving and then teaching. I was teaching at a place called the Laundry Lounge in Sagres, Portugal. And then I was, so the reason I got the gig was there was a couple that was going away for the month of August. They're both yoga teachers, and I was managing their home and Airbnb business, and then also covering their classes at the Laundry Lounge. And back then, I was sharing pretty fiercely. I was still in a lot of deep shadow work. My personal earthly reality was pretty unstable. And I was a bit heightened and ungrounded, but I was still connected, right? So it's like, I remember then thinking, oh, this Laundry Lounge, this is like a new paradigm business, because there was a cafe, amazing food. They had a license, so in the evening they could do cocktails and all that kind of stuff. But there was also a laundry service for all the traveler and international kind of camper van people that would move through Sagres, because it was a surf yoga kind of bohemian type of international vibe in southern Portugal. Interestingly as well, on a symbolic level, it was also called the end of the world, because it's the very end tip of Portugal. And I remember doing a share about that, being like, how symbolic, like at the end of the patriarchy, the end of the old paradigm, the end, these cosmic shifts to then birth anew. And so it had the laundry service. At the weekends, it often did like vintage fairs and like local creative. I remember it broke on me, but I remember buying like a beautiful necklace from like a local creator, jewelry maker. But yeah, like different markets at the weekend, because they had a big like outdoor courtyard and patio. And then the rooftop was the yoga classes. So we did yoga every day, I think. I'm thinking I was last in Morocco earlier this year, and we did 6 days a week. But in Sagres, I was there for a month, and we did yoga every morning. I think once or twice we did some evening classes as well when people signed up. So they have the rooftop yoga, they've got the cafe lounge, and then of course in the evening at the weekends, they'd often have gigs. Local artists or traveling musicians would come in, and they were heaving. They were super, super busy. And then they had the laundry lounge, and there was like a book exchange, and that's what I mean about new paradigm businesses are not corporate monopoly. And this was just like a beautiful couple family. Like I think he might have been Italian and she was Spanish, or he was Portuguese and she was Italian. Like places like this, they're just such international vibratory. And then they had a little boy, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I'm sure they had a child. Or was she Swedish or Austrian? Because I'm thinking she was tall and blonde. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. But again, like an international multilingual couple with a small child running this co-collaborative, to me, new paradigm business. So that's part of the shift away from fueling and buying into corporations that don't necessarily have, they're wounded leaders that don't necessarily have the well-being of the people and the planet in their sphere. They're operating from wounding, they're hoarding, they're stealing, they're, etc. So more and more people awakening to that, establishing small businesses that then will generate the sustainable means to co-create in their respective communities, where we can start sharing food and we can start sharing seeds that usurp the monopolization of companies and corporations like Monsanto. So this is the profundity of these planets transitioning. Neptune, our vision, Saturn coming in to be like, all right, let's build it. Let's ground it. Because Saturn is a long haul as well. Saturn, like, again, I'm Capricorn, I'm Saturnian. I have Saturn up there in Libra, and my Saturn return, I end up going to India for 4 months to do my teacher training and end up being put on a spiritual path, right? And learning from lots of different teachers and lots of different gurus until I embodied the teachings myself and then started to pioneer, my own form of spirituality, which works for the template and the demographic that I'm here to share and teach with, right? Working with other leaders, working with other, and like, again, my own personal path also inspired lots of other people to do their TTC to da 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 da, because even back in the Dizzy, when I was doing my training, there's some people like, what's yoga? Is it a call? Like, not, or so many people that I've taught yoga to are like, thank you so much. Like, I did yoga once and I really didn't enjoy it, or not to diss on other people's practices, but the way we embody our own template and then the way we express ourselves, and the more authentically we express ourselves, the more we kind of viscerally, vibrationally impact people. We reflect something they already know, right? Just like I had friends visiting recently and they were like, some of those shares back in the Dizzy where I was like in very deeply in the shadow work, where a lot of my YouTube shares were just me like purging and crying and processing things, endeavoring to forgive, endeavoring to truly have compassion and love and forgiveness in my own pain for people that I perceived did me wrong, or people that I perceived hurt me, or people, right? Is that it's not, we're only in these shared experiences. And there again, it requires a lot of honesty and transparency. And none of us can force one another to be honest, to be transparent. That's up to self, right? But that's again the discernment of a dissonance. And that's part of the power to come into greater autonomy, when we have the ability and the courage to express a boundary if we're picking up on dissonance, versus knowing our own triggers and knowing when we're being led by a false expectation or a false exchange, right? Where there's these can be increasingly subtle ways of manipulating, dominating, overly attaching ourselves to external ideations, as in, I am a savior, or I'm a good person, or I'm a this, or I'm a that, rather than just being here now and feeling what we're feeling and being able to be honest about what we're feeling. And there again is new spirituality. It's not necessarily meditating for 12 hours a day. It's not necessarily, obviously, going to church. It's like relating to nature, spending time on our own, claiming and creating our own sacred space, being able to live a sustainable life. Like, it's all available. Easy, not necessarily, but nor is the old paradigm to me, right? That's the thing, is that people often like, we want to break free from a 9 to 5, or I don't want to have to work so hard. Oh, well, there is a way to change, but the work looks different. The work is mental and emotional. The work is a continual discerning of how to be more respectful to self and other, how to be more self-aware of what I'm actually feeling, right? This is where we'll see a lot more rising of female leaders and teachers, because in our historical framework, women have been silenced and shut out. So where we pick up on that kind of, so often women's experience is that when we're being clear or firm, people think we're being aggressive. And because again, women have been taught to be submissive and or to silence themselves, and completely blocked out with the historical framework and denied any power, right? So the more we start to open up to the female wisdom within us all, the more we can see a rebalancing. And again, leadership isn't it's not forceful. It's like I don't want to control people. I just want to live my peaceful little life, my peaceful little sustainable life, and have enough for myself and my community. But if I can't own that for myself, if I can't allow myself to be seen, to um, receive that which I've created, then I'll stay bound to an old system where I'm having to give my power to other, where I'm having to deny my own power and continue to bow to an external force outside of self. And this is where the subtleties of exchange come in, is that we can, and the nuance of it, we can all at once be grateful and thankful for all of our experience and for all of one another, and still need to let go of things, still need to release and let go of exchanges that are no longer in resonance, right? Hence, again, Booyaka Shah, Neptune and Saturn in Aries. It's like the karmic load being brought to the higher vision to really cleanse and purge those old aspects of control and domination and trauma, and then structurally build the new. And I mean, I'm just witnessing and feeling it very viscerally in my own businesses, and I'm seeing it being reflected back in some of my community, where their spiritual businesses are starting to take off. They have like so many people I work with and who have been part of the community, have left their corporate jobs, are now building their own yoga businesses, are working on their own spiritual businesses, are, clients that I'm working with are embodying more of their divinity, are working more intuitively, are like, it's just happening in the physical realm, Saturn, after over 15 years of having a discipline and doing the inner work to love the self. And like, long may it continue, because yeah, I'm still hashing out threads of distortion, hashing out threads where maybe I'm still resisting the love of self. It's challenging, right? Okay, there's the Saturn, Neptune, and Aries video for you guys. Let me know if that resonates. Let me know how that feels, how that lands for you. Thank you for being here. My patrons always get ad-free first access, so I'll be sharing this with the Patreons. And then usually a day or two later, I'll put it out to the public. And my top tier patrons get ad-free first access alongside access to the Be the Change online courses, and a 10% discount on having one-to-one sessions with me, either via yoga or doing your tarot or astro tarot. I weave intuitive astrological transits into the tarot readings, which you'll see in the booking services. And I do share intuitively on TikTok, and I have merchandise. You can see the shop. Feel free to buy stuff from the shop. There's just different ways to support the brand, even just subscribing, liking, sharing my content. I'm just dabbling back onto the Facebook now, mainly to promote the T-mail store, because I've just spent so many years creating all this stuff. And about 6 weeks ago, end of March, really, I just had a complete like reset. I come off the majority of the socials. I let myself sleep supremely. I had a rearrangement where my mother moved back down after having a major heart attack, and there's lots of things still kind of morphing and shifting, and yet I am viscerally feeling this renewal. Happy to be here with you guys. Thank you for supporting me, and thank you for supporting All to Love. It really is an earnest vision of like a better world for everybody. And I'm, very much into the yoga vibes of like non-hoarding and non-stealing, and just being compassionate and enjoying the garden and wanting to share with one another at the same time. For some of us, we have to learn to share a little less, and to actually own more of our personal autonomy and knowing, and not giving that away, and not not being controlled and dominated by other people, regardless of how it looks like. It's always a feeling exchange, right? So, and that's another share maybe for another day, but to talk about the difference of being triggered versus dissonance and energetic um, resonance, i.e., an exchange of energy when two fields come together and feeling a dissonance and not necessarily being able to rationalize it, just when it's not feeling appropriate or not feeling fully safe, or if we're just feeling really run down or tired, right? It's like that's different than being triggered. And after 12, 13 years and writing a book about it, I could talk more about really the profundity of owning our own triggers versus sort of being passive. So passive aggression, right? And denying that we might be feeling certain feelings in order to come off and look a certain way, or overly attach ourselves to certain polarity constructs or archetypes, because those are all tools for learning, but we ourselves are our unique autonomous self. None of us are essentially a deity or an archetype. Those are just aspects and fragments of energetics and templates that we can embody and work with as tools for our own expression, right? Because again, Pluto in Aquarius is ushering us to express more authentically who we are for the whole. And yeah, my experience is a fucking journey, man. There's a lot of highs and lows. There's a lot of solitude and alone time and discernment of the nuanced energies that we're all working with. And for me, coming away from mainstream, being increasingly discerning with the amount I'm using my phone and who I'm allowing into my personal reality, and how I'm working with my personal reality, and certainly how I'm working with my body, et cetera, et cetera. Like, it's just an ongoing journey, and I'm pleased to be here. So again, thank you all so much for supporting All to Love. Look at me, I'm getting totally distracted by my frizzball hair. But I appreciate every single one of you, and I respect every single one of you for the journey that you're on, and I'm ever so grateful for the entirety of this expression, this life. And I pray and hope and I hold the vision of a more peaceful world, of a more abundant world, where we all have home and shelter and we're allowed to be who we are, and there's love and there's community, and we all kind of share the load, as it were, to create this new world, right? And help through compassion to understand one another in truth, and not to think we know the other person, but just to really keep practicing coming back to self, to know the self, right? Holla Shazam! Go to altalove.com to subscribe. That's where you can also book sessions with myself and book readings. Facebook, Instagram, All to Love TV, All to Love Apparel, altalove.tmail.com. Description, my lovers. Check out the description where you can sign up to the Patreon community. You can check out the Gmail store. You can also buy my book. But my book is on Amazon, so I respect. You can probably find it through other means, though, maybe. If I also boycott Amazon, I just happen to have a book there. So I'm kind of grateful, but at the same time, yeah, but you can do Kindle and Audible. So you can download the audio version. You can get it on Kindle. I don't know if that's somehow affiliated with Amazon. One day, when there's enough resources, maybe I'll be able to go to the company that I can just produce my own books and totally get away from the Amazon vibratory. But yeah, if you want to read the book and if you want a copy of it, this is what it looks like. The Fearless Life Guide, my own intuitive interpretation of shadow work. I didn't know anything about shadow work when I was writing this. I was just in my own high vibratory of love and my own process, my own intuitively led process, which apparently is pretty much just shadow work. So yeah, check it out. Buy it if you want to support the brand, and if you want a little bit of a read that can help you just give you some tools, some like physical breath work and yoga tools and whatnot. And then there's actually like exercises as well. to help you get to know yourself and do the shadow work and be supported in it and all that jazz. Okay, that's it. That's enough promotion, right? If you stuck around to the end, give me a peace sign, give me a high five, give me a holla shazam namaste. My lovers, have a great day, you guys. Have a wonderful weekend, and may peace be with us all, and let us be ushering in these new paradigms one by one. It's definitely here, the energies. Okay, peace out. Take care.